Hello, everyone, and thank you for joining us for another Evening With event. This time we're with Nicola Davies and Petr Horacek, and we're celebrating the launch of what is genuinely, for me, one of my top books of the entire year. It's called The Star Whale, and when you see inside this book, if you haven't already, you will know exactly what I mean. But as usual, our event is going to start with Janetta Otterbarry from Otterbarry Books, who has published this book. She will just say a few words, and then I will invite Petr and Nicola to join me.
Hello, everybody. Thank you so much for coming. It's the first time we've published Nicola Davies on the Otterbarry Books list. I've known Nicola for a long time and been longing to have her on the list, and here she is. And very excited that she's teamed up with Petr Horacek, who's one of our top picture book illustrator and author of The Last Tiger and the Perfect Present, highly acclaimed on many award shortlists. And so wonderful team. This is a really special book for us. I think you're going to love it. It's full of joy and wonder and humour, not afraid to address big issues about our planet as well. We love it, and we've made it one of our top gift books for the season. And you'll see we've got jacket and this wonderful silver foil, and it just looks completely delectable. So I can't wait to hear what Petr and Nicola are going to say about it. Thank you, as always, to wonderful Nikki Gamble for hosting us this evening. And I'm going to hand straight over to you.
I'm joined by Nicola and Petr. Nicola, when I first saw this book, my heart sang. It's a really joyful book, but a book of many moods and many colours. And Janetta described it as a gift book. That has a particular meaning, and I would use gift in a different way. It is a gift to a reader, this book, without a doubt. I think to begin with, we want to hear a little bit about how it came about, because it's actually quite unusual.
Shall I start, Petr? We worked together before. We worked on a book called Book of Animals for Walker and had the loveliest time working together. That was fantastic. And we did lots of events. We do really good events together. I chat and Petr does fantastic pictures behind me, and they're really good fun for us and for the audience. And while we were traveling doing these events, I was looking at Petr's exquisite little sketchbooks. He does these beautiful little sketches, and he sketches every day. And they are beautiful, varied, quite bonkers sometimes, which I really love. And I was looking at these pictures, and they were inspiring, immediately setting off ideas for poems and stories and conversations and all sorts of things. And so I said to Petr, can we do this? Can I write things to go with these? And that's how it began. So actually, the really special thing about this book, aside from the fact that it's been the most joyful creative experience of my entire career by a long way, is that we did it the other way around. Usually it's the words that come first and then the pictures, but this time the pictures came first before the words.
I must ask you, Petr, what it felt like because this is obviously a sketchbook. You don't ever expect to be picked up and a writer to create based on those images. So did you have any reservations, or were you just really excited about it?
At first, I didn't take Nicola seriously, really. When she said, let's turn it into a book, I just thought it will never happen. But then later on, Nicola asked me if I can send her the folders with the images. So I sent her, it was really well over 300 pictures then. And what was really nice, I sometimes have no idea what some of the pictures are about. I keep these sketchbooks on my working table, and when I'm illustrating a book and I have enough, I feel like I want to do something different, I just make a quick drawing. And that's how these pictures happen. And sometimes I think about them as about to be poems without words, really. Sometimes I don't know what they are about, and I'm expecting that if I look at them again, maybe I will understand them better, or if I show it to somebody, maybe they will make their own stories about them. And what was really exciting, it was when Nicola started writing poems about these sketches, that suddenly I was thinking, oh yeah, actually, that's what it is about. And there was some really interesting exchange between us that she made me understand my own sketches, my own drawings. And that's what was so exciting about the process of working with Nicola.
When we say sketchbook, when we say sketchbook, do you mean a book that you take with you and draw from life, or is it more an imaginary experience?
No, they really are just little, I think, what is it, A5? Yeah, and so I've got some of them here. And I just draw anything which comes into my head without much thinking. They just really are just notes like this. And I have them on the table next to my drawings. So some of them make not much sense. And sometimes I listen radio.
It's what we might call posh doodling.
I take them with me only if I know that I'm somewhere for a longer time and I draw on them, but mostly they are in the drawer or on the table. But yeah, they're not a sketchbooks that I would draw outside sitting on the stairs.
Nicola, what were you going to say?
I was going to say that I can see that one of the images you've got next is among the first images that I wrote to. And that was the inspiration for a poem that is called Mandrill in the Mirror. And what I wrote was my impression from that image. And then Petr did a final image to go with my finished poem. Actually, the process was a real conversation and a real us integrating our work. So there's the final one, the Mandrill in the Mirror.
Let me just show Petr on his own because he's showing the book there. So just see that.
An awful lot of the picture books that I've done, not all of them, but awful lot of the picture books that I've done have been non-fiction. Although I can think creatively, obviously, and I come up with a narrative to string the facts together and all of that, and that's a really creative process. This was so liberating because I didn't have to put any factual material in here. Although an awful lot, most of the images feature animals in some way, they're also more broadly about relationships between animals, between humans and the natural world, and also about our relationship with ourselves and about interior worlds and dreams and fantasy. So that was just fantastic to be able to dive into that and play.
Shall we have a look at some of the sketches that you did, Petr, in leading up to the one that you've shown us there?
Yeah.
So where did this one fit in? I may not have got them in the order that you created them.
That was one of the pictures which Nicola may seen as well as the one before. It's rather sad, this one really, isn't it? So this is before Nicola wrote the stories. Sometimes if I like the drawing in the sketchbook, I make a picture for myself, picture like this. End up in the cupboard then. But yeah, so that was funny because Nicola probably hasn't seen this picture. She only seen the sketchbook. But
I feel like I've seen it though. I think what happened when I was looking through the sketchbooks is that there was one image that I would focus on, but probably having absorbed information and ideas from images that seemed to me to be related to that image. So I think maybe I was pulling out a psychological thread that was running through a sketchbook. I can spot the psychological threads in those sketchbooks.
When did the mirror come into it?
Oh, I was looking at that picture that you saw earlier of the boy and the mandrill and thinking about identity and how we differentiate ourselves from other animals. And humans are very keen to draw lines between themselves and other species and to say, we are special, we have opposable thumbs, we make tools, we do this, we do that, we do the other. And as we look at the animal world more and more, we find that actually that line is steadily being rubbed out. And one of the things that I feel really strongly is this idea that we're all one family of life. And we're certainly one family with other primates like a mandrill, even though the mandrill looks so different. And also, as soon as I started thinking about mandrills. I was thinking about the sound of words, and mandrill in the mirror just popped into my head. And then I had a whole story about this person looking at themselves in the mirror and seeing for the first time something entirely different.
The things that really strike me from the image are the way that Petr has. We know that mandrel's looking behind. Normally you look forward into the mirror, but you know that it's gazing behind it, and the boy, that gaze that's created between the two. But also this mirroring, I think, of the pyjamas and the mandrel's face. That's really connecting them, for me anyway.
Well spotted.
Yeah, there's loads going on, and loads of different ways of interpreting it. And that's one of the things that I feel really strongly about with children, is that with all readers, reading is a circuit between the authors, the book, and the reader. And the authors and the book are same in every instance. But the thing that's unique every time is that reader. So every time the circuit of the book is completed, it's different because it has a different reader. And what I think we've done with these images and poems is create something that is actually beautifully open-ended and inclusive, that invites readers in to imagine and fantasize and make their own stories. Because none of these poems and none of these images is a fixed, certain, clear, single point. It could be lots and lots of different things.
We're going to look at some more images in terms of thinking about the process. In case anybody's wondering why we're not reading this poem, we have got a section coming up and we're going to be reading lots of poems to you. Don't feel that you're going to be missing out. Petr, tell us about this one.
I put into the folder a couple of sketches. This one I put together with another one, which was about the lion. And yeah, this one. And there was also the head of the lion and the sketch of the girl. That's right. And this one. Yeah, I think all these sitting beasts and looking at the moon and the shape of the moon appearing, I'm only guessing, but I'm thinking maybe Nicola was thinking about it. She saw them. And this is a kind of sketch for the final picture in the book. Last night I visited a lion. This is actually the opening poem in the book. And in fact, it's the very first poem I did, not because it's the first one in the book, but because this one, I felt very strongly about this one and for the message in the poem as well. So it just hit me and I wanted to do it. And another thing, I'm not always very comfortable of drawing children or people, animals, it's my world more. But yeah, I thought this will be the first picture in the book. So what you saw before, there were the sketches in my sketchbook, and this is the final picture.
There's such a tenderness in the way that you've drawn that child and the humility of that child in the face of that very noble lion, which has antecedents in literature too, if you think about Lucy and Aslan, whether you like that story or not, the child and the big lion. But I think it meant something really special to you as well, Nicola.
Well, it was the way that Petr had placed the child and the lion in one of his sketches. There was a distance between them, but there was a tension between them, a tension that suggested to me a conversation, and perhaps quite a difficult conversation. You can see the lion is looking so intently at that child. He's not looking fiercely. He's not about to eat her. He's not about to attack her, but he's giving her a hard stare, actually. And as you say, she's looking down in enormous humility. Actually, Nikki, I know we're not supposed to be reading things now, but can I read this one just quickly?
Of course, it's your book. You can do what you want.
So it's called Last Night I Visited a Lion. Last night I visited a lion. He wasn't expecting guests, he said. Yet he was still polite. We sat, not close together, he was a lion after all, and spoke about the hardships of his life, the constant need for roaring, the way wildebeest will not stand still, how hyenas stand around laughing. But most of all, about the way the rains don't come as they used to, how the dry ground cracks open and his cubs starve. Tell them, he said, tell the humans how it is for me. So here I am to tell you about the suffering of lions and how we need to change. Now, for me, that is the most difficult poem to read without breaking down in this collection, because that is what my professional life has been. I am there sitting before this reproachful gaze from the natural world. And my job is to tell you about the suffering of lions and how we need to change. And that's how I've spent the last 40 odd years.
But I think you can look back on your career knowing that you have told so many people and feel that you've been able to communicate. You've had a big impact on young people and how they view these things.
I hope so. What I tell myself is what my mother told me, which is little drops of water, little grains of sand make the mighty ocean and the promised land. And I turned that into another poem in a different collection. And I added to that and I said, we are but drops of water, we are but grains of sand, but together we're an ocean and we can make a promised land. I'm a grain of sand, but if I can activate a few other grains of sand and a few other little grains of sand after that, and maybe some drops of water, then we all do what we can do. And hopefully it makes a mosaic that does something useful. But activating imagination in other people, activating thought and engagement and ideas, that is the beginning of change. I believe that to the roots of my soul. I believe that. And that's what we're trying to do with this book, really, is to get children to use their imagination and to use their minds and to take delight in that.
The connection is not only over your sketchbooks, but your work. There's a sensitivity, a feeling for, an empathy for animals and the natural world. That's a running theme through your work. So I'm guessing that it's not just looking at some sketches that Nicola liked, but connecting at that soulful level.
I'm so glad that actually Nicola read the poem, because after you heard Nicola reading the poem, I think you understood what this book is about. There is lots of fun in the book as well. There are silly poems, but this one had to be in the front. I honestly spent so much time with this picture. I get stuck with it straight away. If I am happy about something in the book, it's the girl and the way how she looks. I think this picture works well. And there is a respect between them, the distance there and everything. And yeah, I think this poem, to me, it's the most important one in the book. Although, as I said, it's such a variety of poems there. There are fun, jokes, and also poems where you learn a lot from it.
I love this one.
I feel the imagery feels like fairy tale.
Yeah.
Tell us about it, Petr.
Again, sometimes I do these drawings. The previous picture, it's called something Girl and the Shadow Dog, and Otherwise Nothing Happened. That's what I've written there in Czech. I sometimes do picture just because I want to write something like that. So I put these sketches there because they were leading towards, if you put a next one, please, and maybe next one and one more. Yeah, that's right. So this is the one which inspired Nicola to write a poem, which perhaps Nicola will tell us what is the poem about, because again, I thought it was brilliant at the time when she was writing it. Okay, so I did this picture because I like it in the sketchbook, so I did a picture for myself. I did it a couple of times, this one, in different versions. And for the book, I don't know if you have the spread from the book somewhere. I pretty much copied the original sketch. But maybe Nicola would like to talk about this text.
I think I was saying to you the other day, Petr, that I wish I'd kept a diary of what I wrote and when, because I wrote a lot of the poems in one big block. But then I wrote other little ones. There were little outliers to that. But I think this was one of the first ones that I wrote. And I wrote it when we were either still in lockdown or lockdown was still that enveloping experience and we still hadn't quite stepped out of it. So it's about lockdown. But if you look at the expression on the girl's face in this final version, but also in the first sketch that I wrote the poem to, she's quite calm. She's not afraid. She's not struggling. She's just lying there in a holding pattern. And I think for me, that said so many things about what lockdown was like for us all, that, yes, there were some people for whom lockdown was just an unremittingly hideous experience. But for many of us, I think it was mixed. And actually, the enforced withdrawing from the world in some ways was a relief. There was a whole load of things that we no longer needed to worry about. And that what was difficult about that was that it was enforced. But what I hope maybe we've learned is that we can choose to withdraw sometimes. We can choose to take a step back and take a breath and be away from all the things that stress us and do our heads in and make life feel like an endless washing machine cycle, and just take a moment of calm. And that's what the poem is about.
I'm about to ask a really silly question. Whether it's a blood moon or a sun, it can be either, can't it? What a silly question.
Wow, I never even thought of that. What would you say, Petr?
I don't know. No, is it sun? I think it's irrelevant. It's just, I think about these paintings same as my sketchbook as an abstract. It's a, it's not relevant to the poem. In picture, it's just a accent in the picture which corresponds with the color of the ties of the girl.
Yeah.
I think about it as sun, but if you think it's moon,
Blood moon.
But isn't that great? That the questions I love from readers, best of all, about books, are the ones where my answer is I don't know. I don't know. What do you think? Because that's the absolute nub of what we're trying to do is to get readers to take possession of these and use them as their own internal landscape and inspiration for their own internal stories.
I could afford this in the book of poetry, in the books like this. Obviously, I mostly illustrate my picture books and write and illustrate my picture books. I wouldn't do that there. It's a slightly different thing, but poems gives me this freedom.
Oh, I see. It's all right to just put any old moon in my pictures, but not yours.
Sorry about that.
Read us the poem, Nicola, before somebody gets in trouble.
Inside the wolf, life was simpler. I didn't have to worry if my socks matched or what to eat for lunch. There were no annoying relatives or demanding friends. It was dark and warm, and the sounds of the forest came to me like music from another room. Sometimes, when I miss being inside the wolf, I sit in a cupboard to remind myself of how good it feels to choose to open the door and step into the light.
I can see a connection between this and the lion poem. There's a sort of protectiveness in these big beasts that we are scared of. A lot of people are frightened of them. We often respond, or we have done historically, responded to these things out of fear. And yet here they're being shown in this protective way, which I find quite interesting.
Do you know, one of the things I think we really need psychologically, and sadly, of course, we are losing day by day, is the feeling that there is, what I call it is big wild, is round the edges of our consciousness, just at the edge of our psychological peripheral vision, there is wildness. Wildness that we cannot control and that doesn't care about us. And actually, I think that frame is really important for human beings. And I think in a funny sort of way, ghastly, terrifying, potentially apocalyptic, though climate change is, that's a big reminder that we're not in control, that we've done something and put a system out of control and put ourselves in peril. And that big wild is doing its thing.
Let's have a bit of humour then. I absolutely adore these pictures. Obviously, this isn't in the book, but we're going to see one that is. This is a tape. I love this with the umbrella following along behind the.
Yeah, the picture before, the one before was hippo. Now we have the girl.
Next.
Yeah, this one. Again, I think this is the combination of both. Here's the hippo, and there is the girl with the tapir. And we talk about these pictures with Nicola, and I said, I love the way how you combine these two pictures together. That's mean you really know my sketchbook. And she said it was purely by accident because she thought it's a girl with a hippo, but it doesn't really matter. This is the illustration for the poem.
I was absolutely convinced that the umbrella was in the picture with the hippo, not the table.
Uh-huh.
Absolutely.
Well, it is now.
I misremembered it. Right. But then I suppose in a way I had combined it because my brain had edited it. Because my brain's quite functionally wired. I guess I thought I can see a reason for going for a walk with a hippo with an umbrella, but maybe not a tapir.
What's interesting is Petr didn't send me the image that is on the next page.
No, I didn't know.
People are going to have to get the book to see that, but it all becomes clear as to why you must take walking with a hippo
when you take a hippo from a walk. And anybody who knows anything about hippobiology will perhaps guess why it is. But it's a classic little kids delight in the yucky joke.
Yeah. And I love the fact that in that image, the one that we can't see, is that Petr's put a king there, or I think it's a king or a queen,
Yes.
I can't quite remember, and the crown is flying off. It's almost like Emperor's New Clothes in as much as the child's got it right, and the king, the hierarchy, they've got it wrong.
Yeah,
But we didn't have a king when I was illustrating it, I must say, to my defense.
Oh, that's true. That's true. I wrote king in the poem deliberately so I didn't offend anybody who's a great monarchist, because I thought I'll put king in because then they'll know it's a fantasy world. And then, of course, by the time the book comes out, we haven't got a queen anymore. We've got a king.
This is the title poem. And what strikes me here, Petr, is that this could be a constellation or it could be the ocean. It's both of those things at once. It's the sky, and it, for me, connects space and the space and the deep ocean.
Well, this is actually really interesting because when I was looking through the sketchbook and I was trying to send you some of the images, I actually realized that this kind of star whale, it's actually haunting me for a very long time. You Nikki, may remember the book I did, Blue Penguin, and there is the symbol of, there is basically white whale in the sky appearing in the picture books, and white whale then comes and rescue the penguin or try to take him into other place or whatever. But it's appeared in very similar way in the sky. And then I did the sketches later on, and then Nicola wrote the book. You know, it's funny how it's appearing in my sketchbooks, in my notes, and I'm trying to write a book as well. When I saw this sketch, it was quite interesting how it all clicked together, really.
Can I just ask you, Petr, these are obviously in your imagination. Are they in your dreams as well as in your imagination or not?
Oh no, there would be too much now.
Okay.
I used to write down my dreams and then I remember them, but then I stopped. It's probably saved me. I can now sleep without working.
Have we got some more of the star whale? Let's have a look. Oh, wow. I love that tiny little human. It's a man there, isn't it?
It's just so lovely. It's just so lovely. One of the things I love most about Petr's illustration is the backgrounds and the landscapes and how just wonderfully patterned and rich and gorgeous and abstract they are. And I think as a little kid, I would totally have loved those.
What strikes me here, though, is I said it's a man, isn't it? But actually, it's almost like a creature of the water as well. And I guess we came from water. So it's almost, it's man, but it's not a man. It's almost gone back to the water.
He seems very comfortable there, doesn't he?
Yeah. I've actually been that close to a sperm whale. Yeah, a long time ago. They are very lovely. Oh, it's so gorgeous, that picture. I so love it. But do you see what I mean about the kind of beautiful, abstract nature of those planets and galaxies and stars? And
that's a good link, actually, to looking at this spread here that I'm going to put on the screen, which for people watching, they won't know that this is a double page spread that has no words on it. It comes across you, it's quite unexpected. You really expect a poem on every page. But then we have this. Petr, I'd like you to talk to us a little bit about it.
There is a poem which follows and about it's abstract. It's about planets and it's abstract, but that's it. There is a text in between. Sorry, I choose the one without the text. So the previous picture, it's actually right in the middle of the book, and Janetta, the publisher, told us actually we have an extra spread. We can do something with it, and we decided not to put extra poem because obviously we had lots of material, but we decided not to put extra poem there. We thought the book needs a brief and having this kind of universe. But is it a universe? Because, Nikki, you made a really interesting point yesterday. You said it could be planktons or something in the water, and it could be anything. And I could obviously paint the planets to look like planets or whatever, but I just simply to show the collage and the material and the kind of to look arty, to inspire children that it's actually done on the table, on the paper. So it's creative work as well as universe, as well as plankton or whatever. So I quite like the freedom of explanation of these illustrations.
I think people are very reluctant to present children, young children particularly, with anything that's abstract, that's not figurative. But actually, if you think to your own childhood, think of the times you lay underneath a tree and watch the pattern of light coming between the leaves. Watch the clouds. When I was little, I used to sleep opposite a pair of crushed velvet green curtains. And I would look at the patterns in those curtains and see battles, animals, humans. Even if they don't have the language to express it, doesn't mean to say it's not there. And that's what abstract stuff, beautiful abstract stuff that could be this or it could be that or it could be whatever. It really feeds that, I think. I would have adored that centre spread when I was little.
This is so interesting that we all have the same memories. We all remember looking at the ceiling in our bed or detail on the wall and seeing things. We all have the same memory. We all remember taking a glass marble, looking through it and see the whole universe. We all done it. And still there will be people in the publishing world and there will be parents who will say, oh, children wouldn't understand abstract. That's complete nonsense. We don't have to present them with the tidy, beautiful, computer-generated illustrations with big goggly eyes. We can show them art. We can show them the way. Tell them, this is how you can paint. This is what is possible. This is perfectly okay. And so what I'm saying is that children understand abstract more than anybody else.
more than adults. They respond to it. Absolutely.
Well, after our conversation yesterday, we were all saying in the 1960s, I remember there was more abstract art in children's books. But actually, I also looked at a lot of my dad's books that were about painting, and I enjoyed looking at those as much as picture books. And in one of my first childhood homes, I lived in it up to the age of 5. So I therefore must have been younger than 5 with this memory. And there were 2 prints that I remember really clearly that my dad had. One was Paul Klee, which was the cityscape with the sun, and that was in my bedroom. And the other was Guernica, the Picasso, and I spent hours and hours looking at those beasts and what was going on in that picture. And that memory of those 2 images is so strong. I agree with you entirely.
I wanted to also say that how happy it makes me, and it happened quite often, that the child will come to me and say, I know how you did it. You use wax crayons and watercolors. You printed from polystyrene, because they do it sometimes in better schools where the teacher is a bit adventurous. He would show children how to print from polystyrene, how to use wax crayons and watercolors, how to print leaves from the garden. And children can see that. And it makes me very happy when a child comes to me and says, I know how you did that. It's really lovely.
Yeah, because then they can go away and start to do their own.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I do want us to get to read some of these poems, and we're going to start with the Kingfisher, and I'm going to start with the image the right way up. When I put the presentation together, I thought, oh, that Kingfisher's the wrong way up, and I turned it the other way, and I was looking at it thinking, no, I think I've got it wrong, and I had got it wrong. This is the right way up, isn't it?
It is, yeah.
And the Kingfisher, tell us the story behind that.
Oh, I don't know. It's just, I walk a lot by the river, and we have kingfishers. And it's always, you often can hear them before you see them. It's the very high-pitched noise, and you know it's somewhere there. And sometimes I hear it and never see it. I was walking with a friend, and all I seen was just suddenly this kind of flash above the water. Very quick, beautiful turquoise color with the reflection in the water, just so beautiful, and it disappears. And it's like when you lying in the garden in the summer looking at the starry sky waiting for shooting star, but even better. This is even better because it's full color. And I've seen it a couple of times, especially during the lockdowns. Things were happening. We had otters in the river and everything. And I used to walk very early in the morning and stuff. And yeah, so I did lots of pictures of kingfishers. We talked about it with Nicola, about kingfishers, and we both had a very similar feeling about it. So.
We say halcyon days, which is obviously from the Kingfisher. And actually just looking at that colour, there's something about that Kingfisher blue and orange. It actually occurs quite a lot, that combination in your images. It's incredibly uplifting as a colour combination. Shall we have a look at what I did with it, which, look, sacrilege. I turned it the wrong way up.
It's interesting how different it makes it.
It is different.
Wow.
But you can see from what's on the other side that it doesn't feel right. I did it on the obvious.
Put it right.
I can see why you do that. But you know what? This was a really interesting little source of inspiration, because actually it wasn't just your picture, Petr, that made me write the poem that I wrote. It was the way you described being out for a walk and seeing this kingfisher, and you were with a friend and they were talking to you, and the way you described it was that their voice just melted into the background, and the only thing you could see was this extraordinary flash of neon turquoise, and they do really look like they're interiorly lit. And actually what you telling me about that and your pictures enabled me to do was to write a poem so that your picture and my words just capture, I hope, this moment, this very, very fleeting moment of absolutely transcendent delight in something in the world around you. And that's something I think we've done a few times through this book, is just capture those moments of utter and complete transporting joy when you don't think about anything. You almost cease to be anything but your senses, and you just experience this beauty that's available to us in the natural world.
Are you going to read this one to us, Nicola?
Yeah, sure. It's very short. Kingfisher. A strike of turquoise lightning, swallowed by its own reflection. A flash of neon in the shadows underneath the bank. A moment when your heart's on hold and nothing matters in the world but this small glint of wonder.
Wonder is one of the themes that runs through the book. There are others too. I thought we might move from the kingfisher into the hedgehog as being a little bit more commonplace, what you would hope would be in your garden. And what I loved about this poem when I read it was how you drawn in the language, the medieval language, urchin for the hedgehog, or the Welsh in there. And I realised after I'd read it, that's why we have sea urchins, because they're named after hedgehogs, the urchins.
They were such a feature of my childhood. I can remember one of the places I lived was near what's now the M25. So very urban, very suburban. But there were loads of hedgehogs. You could go out on any summer evening and see them tootling about on the lawn or rootling in a hedgerow. And I've seen one here. So I live in a very rural part of Wales, and I've seen one hedgehog since we moved here, and this is our 4th summer to see them. They are now so vanishingly rare. And they're not part of every child's experience in the way that they used to be. So I think it's really important that we remember them and remember the words for them, because if we haven't got the words and we haven't got the memory, if the awareness of that drops out of our language and our hearts, then we've no chance to bring them back. But if we remember and remember the words and we remember the experience and share it, then there's a chance that hedgehogs can once again be commonplace and part of everybody's daily, nightly landscape in the summer.
I love the leaf prints on this page. It's just perfect, and perfect for this time of year.
Hedgehog. I used to see first pig tootling through the summer dusk at the edge of the lane at the bottom of the garden, almost out of sight. Mostly you were quiet, urchin, a tiny, busy shadow searching for worms and slugs and beetle grubs. Once I heard you snorting to your squealing hoglets in a tangled hedgerow. You snuffled through my childhood, hotchy-witchy. You stood on tiptoe at the edge of all my summer nights. But now, at the bottom of the garden, you have faded, almost out of sight.
What is it that's threatening the hedgehogs? Did we kill them off by feeding them milk and bread?
No, we kill them off by killing off what they eat, by tidiness, pesticides, slug killer, all the neatness and the consequent drop in vertebrate populations. So their food has gone, the untidy corners of gardens and parks and liminal places that they once loved.
I can't tell you how sad I am to see so much astroturf going in place of lawns. So maybe there's a planet.
This picture made me think of Saint-Exupéry's The Little Prince. And this picture has got that same kind of spiritual, reflective quality. Maybe there's a planet. Maybe somewhere there's a planet where hares grow as big as houses and ant-sized people live in bottle tops. Maybe somewhere there's a planet entirely made of cheese or chocolate, where people dress in woven starlight and only get out of bed on Tuesdays. Maybe somewhere there's a planet where everything is backwards and time doesn't go in a straight line at all. I don't know. Anything is possible. What I do know is that on our planet, hares run in the moonlight. Sunlight sparkles on the long grass and birds sing. Maybe we could keep it that way. I don't know, but anything is possible.
This is one that I chose, and Petr said that I had to read it. So I'm glad it's really short. But I will just say the reason that I chose this poem is because, as Nicola knows, I am a true arachnophobic, but one that tries very hard to see the beauty in spiders and to try and overcome that fear. I've just never quite been able to do it. So when I see something as beautiful as this image, just like looking at Louise Bourgeois' artwork, making yourself look at this creature as a weaver of something so beautiful as a spider's web. There's a Japanese illustrator called Susumu Shingu who did a wordless book which is just about the creation of the spider's web. And so I do make myself look at these. I can see the beauty in it, and hoping that one day if the spider comes into my room I won't be frightened of it. I love the fact here as well that Petr didn't just do a literal spider web but gave us the movement of it, and it's almost like it's very magical because of that. I think anyway, spider made a silken finger for the wind to kiss, and holding it wind carried her away, but wind grew fierce and spider fled. Now spider weaves a silver harp, forever hoping wind will pluck its strings to say their love still lives.
First step towards getting to like spiders.
We've got a couple more poems to share before our final poem. I love the kind of rhythms through the book, Petr. Have you got the thumbnails there that you can show us?
Oh, maybe I've got just pictures like this, but when we were doing it, I was having them on the screen so I can see clearly how the book will look like. We really care for the book to have a rhythm, really, same as the picture books. So we shifted the poems around based on the visual impression from the book, really. So these are the thumbnails I was using.
Almost the decision about the ordering of poems was almost entirely visually led, which was brilliant, I think. We did a little bit of tweaking, so we didn't get two rhyming ones together, but really the primary driving force of the ordering was visual. And it's been the right decision, absolutely the right decision.
So Granny has a blackbird on her shoulder.
She does. My granny's boots are shiny red. She keeps a leopard by the bed. She's skinny as a runner bean and paints her toenails neon green. And she always has a blackbird on her shoulder. My granny's house is shocking pink with tadpoles living in the sink. She takes me surfing in the sea and gives me chocolate bars for tea. And she always has a blackbird on her shoulder. My granny's not like other grans who tell you shh and wash your hands. My granny's brave and wild and free. When I grow up, that's what I'll be, and I'll always have a blackbird on my shoulder.
Fabulous. I want to be that granny.
Yeah, I want to be that granny too. I think Zebra's Dream is so spiritual. I love it. I love that picture you did of the zebras. Just, it seems like a wonderful. Anyway, the zebra's dream. The sun's eye burns the sky white, and heat haze melds the herd into a single bonkers barcode. But the zebra's minds are cool, drenched in the same dream of mountains, moonlight, and a summit where a single scarlet flower blossoms just for them.
Wow.
I love it. I love that picture so much.
There are so many that you just want to pause and reflect on afterwards. There's a sort of, as you say, there's a visual movement through the collection, but also this constant changing of mood and emotion as well. We've got one more poem to share, which is Goldfinch. Then that will be the end of the event, but I'm going to just show some slides of Petr's other images for a quiet moment at the end. So I would really like to thank the audience that joined us tonight. We had a really good audience turnout for coming to hear about your book. Thank you to Janetta and Otterbury Books, to Tatty and Gail and everybody at Otterbury Books. But obviously the biggest thanks of all to you, Nicola, and to Petr. As always, it's an education whenever I meet you and get the chance to chat. So Petr, you start with the goldfinch.
I will tell you about the goldfinch. Before I do that, I just want to say thank you to you, because we met a long time ago. You were one of the first people who got me on the stage, actually. I don't know if you know that, but I remember you reading from the picture book, and I learned so much from your talks, and absolutely big fan of yours. So
Oh my God.
this evening it was great. As we said previously, we were putting pictures into order visually, but this poem was the last one in the book, and I think Nicola put her there on purpose because she knew what it means for me. I love the bird. I saw the bird once cycling. He was flying in front of my bike. They don't fly very fast, not for long. And I talked to my dad about the goldfinch, and it was one of the very last conversations I had with my dad. And before he died, Nicola then wrote this beautiful poem, which she will read to us. And it's the last picture in the book, and I'm glad it is.
Goldfinches are very special. Goldfinch. Such a small thing, a puff of feathers, light as breath, and the tinkling that bluebells would make if they rang. But those colours, crimson like a rose heart or an ember, a glowing fragment of volcano, gold, real gold, gilded butter or sunshine and gorse flowers twice distilled. Such a small thing, but easily enough to bless a day and set the heart free and flying.